Okay, we're live. Good evening. This is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win, and I'm attorney Vince Davis. I'm joined tonight by some very special guests, Miss G. Georgette Truen, Miss Cassandra. How are you, Cassandra? And we
Good.
have a very special guest tonight. Is it Kimmy Runyon? Hello, Kimmy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. So, what great state in this country are you from?
Right now, I'm living in Utah. Just moved here from Idaho and kind of bounced around, lived in about half of the states here.
Oh, okay. What were you doing in Idaho? I have some friends that live in Idaho that moved there just right outside of Boise.
Oh, okay. Well, my sister used to live around Boise area. I lived in closer to Twin Falls area. Um, I was, I kind of like to dabble. I was doing car sales for most of the time there, and it wasn't my thing. And did quite a bit of photojournalism there, working for the little paper in
Oh,
Burley.
okay. So, did you have a run-in with CPS in one of the states you've lived in?
So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the story that I shared. I have had some in my adult years with my own kids, but the one that I'm most interested in sharing is I'm a foster kid that was adopted, and it's the most of my experience with CPS was when I was a kid.
Okay, what state was that in?
It was here in Utah.
In Utah. Okay.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if you've ever gotten the impression from watching our shows or my videos. I'm not a big fan of adoption in CPS cases.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of reasons why. I won't go into them here, but do you care to share your experiences as a foster child in Utah?
Um, Absolutely. I'm so sorry. Let me mute my phone real quick. Um, yeah, so there absolutely was a reason for removing myself and two of my siblings from the home. There was some neglect and all of the abuses took place there. So there was a legitimate reason for us to be removed. And the foster home that we went into, um, I mean, they're good people. But I do feel like it was kind of they wanted like this picture perfect. My adoptive mother couldn't have kids of her own, and it's a Mormon family, and she really wanted kids, um, and it just every time that we didn't like fit into the ideals that she had of what she wanted her family and the family portraits to look like, there was either some pretty serious emotional abuse. Um, we were removed from the home, all of us, all three of us, at one point or another. My biological brother was actually the first to be kicked out of her house. I mean, she didn't like how rebellious he was. He bleached his hair. I think he was about 12 years old at the time. He bleached his hair, and there was one other specific incident that it's his story, so I'm not going to share. But it just really, I mean, on a scale of 1 to getting kicked out, it was a pretty minor infraction. But it just, she kicked him out. Um, I think I was 7 at the time. I went into foster care with her when I was 6. We were adopted by them when I was 9. And during that time, um, she had kicked my older brother out. So it was just my older sister and I that were adopted. Um, and a few years, I mean, in our preteen years, we kind of started not really wanting to go to church with them anymore. My sister was sent to live with aunts and uncles. And I mean, it was for schooling opportunities, but also because, I mean, at the time they just weren't thrilled with the idea that she didn't want to go to church anymore. Um, and and then shortly thereafter, so I think I was 13 or 14 when my older sister left the home after we'd been adopted. And then shortly after that, I was 15 or 16 when I started getting into that rebellious thing. I wanted a boyfriend. I didn't want to go to church. So I was also sent to live with an aunt and uncle. And then again, didn't want to go to church there either. I actually skipped seminary school, which was, yeah, if you're not familiar with that, let me know. I can elaborate, trying not to go off on too many tangents. Um, and I ended up in high school going to 3 or 4 different group homes and foster homes after having been adopted, because I didn't want to go to church. And the therapist at the time had told my adoptive mom that she shouldn't be forcing us to go to church. And instead of just, compromising or anything like that, she kind of just kicked kicked me out and sent me to different foster homes in high school.
So you were adopted and then you ended up in foster care?
Hmm.
Did you age out of foster care? Meaning, did you turn
Um,
18 in foster care and never to go back to your adoptive parents' home?
no, so they actually, my senior year, about the last 6 months before I turned 18, they ended up sending me to live with my biological mom in Florida.
Interesting. Did your mom ever make any moves to get her parental rights back with you?
Um, Not really. No. There was some drug use at the time that we were removed from the home, and a lot of missed visits, and a lot of failed drug tests on her part. And it wasn't until 4 or 5 years into the adoption that she reached out and got the reconnection thing back.
Okay. So, how would you rate your overall experience with foster care? Was it really, really good, mediocre, or really, really bad?
Um, I feel like to a certain extent they saved our lives physically, but as far as emotionally, like there was just so much emotional neglect that took place in the home after foster care and adoption and stuff. There was some sexual abuse with a foster brother during the first 2 years in the foster care that took place that was really hard. Um, and so, I mean, it definitely had its ups and downs. Um, I don't feel like I was neglected after having been adopted and stuff. But I don't feel like I had any say whatsoever in my life from that point forward.
Very good. Now, you were in foster care in Utah, and now you have or you had a case, a CPS case as a parent in Utah?
It was in Idaho.
Oh, in Idaho.
And it was, well, actually, so my adoptive mom actually did call CPS here in Utah on me a few years ago and reported past marijuana use because I had confided in her that in the past I had used marijuana. And so she called CPS and told them, and they told them that because it was past use, there was nothing that they could do. Um, and so they never investigated. And then in Idaho, it was just my ex-husband calling and making anonymous reports that were investigated and dismissed with, no grounds for it.
Marijuana in California is legal
Mhm.
recreationally and medically, right? Is
Mhm.
it legal there in Utah?
It is now medicinally, and I could pursue that. I no longer use it, but at the time I was illegally using it. And I mean, not like I've had so much anxiety and depression, and so I do feel like I was self-medicating for that, but it absolutely was illegal at the time.
It's
But
is it
again,
le-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
is it legal there now?
It is medicinally. And I probably could pursue a medical card for it. I mean, I've got depression going back to when I was 16, 17, and my adoptive parents had me on three different prescriptions for mood disorder, clonazepam, Lamictal, the Depo shot, just pretty much just trying to stop my emotions and hormones, and send me to therapy, and just they didn't really like the fact that I had my own emotions and thoughts separate from theirs.
That's interesting. Very interesting. You know,
Those are some heavy needs.
do you have any thoughts about being a foster parent yourself at this point in time?
um, I'm I've got biological kids. Not sure I understand the question.
Well, have you ever thought, oh, I want to be a foster parent?
I have had that thought, but I'm a renter, and like I mean, there have been times in my life where I just don't have much stability going from rental. You know, if I owned a home, and if I wasn't divorced, then absolutely that would be something that I think that I would be interested in pursuing, because I don't think that there are enough people, enough foster parents that are in it for to help the kids. You know, I think a lot of them are there to try to get their, chasing the perfect picture perfect family portrait, or just collecting the paycheck. One of my foster parents in high school, they absolutely were there for the paycheck.
Hmm. If I ask you to tell me the three best things about foster care and the three worst things about foster care, could you share that with us?
I could. Might take me a
Okay.
minute. Okay, so three best things. Um, in my personal case, I did get, at least for the first few years, quite a bit of stability in that family environment that I had kind of always wanted. And that did fall apart in my teen years for sure.
Yeah. So that stability that you wanted, you got at the beginning of foster care because you were comparing to that to your biological mom, who apparently had some drug issues.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, just like seeing my parents every evening and the family dinner, like that kind of stability. I had never had that before. And so that was a huge plus for me. Um, Family vacations. I don't. I mean, that feels like such a silly thing to have as a one of the best things, but being able to go on trips and stuff, I had never had that before. Um,
So we have stability, we have the family dinners and trips. What other one thing that you really liked about, being in the foster care process?
I guess access to education.
Okay.
Because the first few years of my life, like I didn't know how to read until I went into foster care.
Hmm.
And my adoptive mom is an English teacher, and so like I feel like I had access to a lot of educational aspects that I hadn't had prior, that really did make a huge difference in in my life. I mean, like my biological parent, I one of the reasons that I think CPS was called is because I didn't go to school at all for kindergarten or first grade, and so that access to education.
Before we go on to the three negative things about foster care, Deirdre Payne says, do you still talk to your biological mother?
I do, and there are some strains in there, but yeah, we still talk. We still have visited a few times. I actually have lived with her after high school a little bit in my adult life too, and it didn't really work out. But that's a whole another thing, I think.
Melissa Alvarado asks, were you able to stay close with your biological siblings?
No,
No?
Nope. In fact, one of my older brothers actually committed suicide about a year or so after I went into foster care. Um, and there was some abuse from my older siblings when I lived in the home, that I've blocked a lot of it out. Um, and I do, like, I have access to be able to contact them now that I'm an adult, but that's been a recent, like, in the last few years thing.
Okay. All right, so let's go to the second part of that question. Three, I guess, worst things you liked about, you thought about foster care.
Um, in my particular case, it felt like I no longer had a voice. I didn't have a say. It was, I mean, my parents picked out, my mom, adoptive mom, picked out like all of our clothes. She did our hair every morning. Um, and at the time, like, I didn't really think anything negative about it. Like, I felt like the attention was good, and the fact that she cared about how I looked and stuff was good. But as I got into my teenage years and I kind of wanted to pick out my own clothes and stuff and still didn't really have a say, that's when it started getting pretty hard. So not having my own voice, and it just was kind of like a, yeah, I didn't have my own voice, my own choices, or anything like that.
All right, not having your own voice, that's one. Any others that come to mind?
Um, I think there, like, my high school years, when I didn't fit into like the whole Mormon church family picture thing that she had in mind. Her sending me from the home after she had already kicked my older brother out when I was 7 or 8, and then kicked my sister out when I was 12 or 13. Um, and then when they sent me away too, like, it kind of, that part kind of sucked, that it didn't, it ended up not being the happily ever after thing that I wanted and hoped for.
Hmm. If you could tell a judge that does these types of cases something good or bad about being in foster care, what would you tell judges? But, because a lot of judges, maybe all, I don't want to say all, but maybe the vast majority of judges, you know, and lawyers have no experience being in foster care or growing up without their family, right? What would
Yeah.
you tell a judge or an attorney, a child's attorney, about foster care that you think that they should know when making decisions about foster children?
Look beyond the paperwork, for sure. Trust your intuition when you're meeting the foster parents and stuff, because I mean, it is hard to say what somebody's motive is for bringing children into their home, but look a little bit closer at that. Um, Try to place the child with family first if you can. Like, I have a biological aunt that was also living in Utah at the time that I really wish that we could have gone and lived with. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't think that they ever even considered that. Um, and I mean, just really look into family, and look into the foster parents' motives, because sometimes there's, not always great intentions behind wanting to bring a child into your home. In a utopic world, absolutely, people would just want to make the world a better place and make a difference in a child's life. But unfortunately, that's not quite the reality.
I think it was last night I was telling the show and Miss G and Cassandra about a woman that I represented who was a former foster parent who had a lawsuit against the foster parent in the county because she was abused. And it was her contention that she was a foster child in this home to be the cleaning person and the sexual partner of the married couple that took her in. Um, that was her contention anyway. The case resolved without going to trial, so it was never determined by a court of law. But you know, throughout my years, I've been an attorney 35 years, and I think I've been doing these cases about 32 years, and I've come across things that disturb me about our foster care system. And our foster care system replaced the orphanage system. And I don't know who I was talking to or where I heard this. You know, orphans, so I was told, during holiday season, sometimes orphans were given to families as a Christmas gift. It was kind of like they were property or chattel. And that was one of the reasons why, the orphanage system was done away with. And we went to the foster care system. But I'm not sure that the foster care system, you know, I mean, it has its problems, because, sometimes you're placed in a foster home. And depending on what type of child you are, you might be a person that's, a victim or easily taken advantage of. And I've heard stories about foster kids being abused by other foster kids. Sometimes, a foster kid is placed in a home where there is another foster kid who has a tendency or predilections to abusing physically or sexually other children. And, you're not warned of that as a child, and, they're not really looking out for that. I've heard stories about foster children being abused by, the foster parents, you know, and I have heard, and this is a little bit more rare, but I think I've seen newspaper articles about it, but I was tangentially connected many years ago to a case where a social worker was abusing the foster child. The social worker would come over or take them for a ride in the car, that type of thing. So, people are people, and no matter where you have people in any certain type of social setting, there are atrocities that happen. And the same is for foster care. Well, a lot of times, we think, oh, we take kids away from parents and we put them in foster care, and we just believe and hope that that's going to be a better situation. And it's not always, true. Now, I didn't live
Mhm.
your experience. I don't know how you would rank that on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being worst. But you said something, and I hope this is not embarrassing or put you in a spot. But you said something, you kind of went over it really fast. You mentioned about some type of abuse when you were in the foster home. And,
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that that has affected you negatively throughout your life. And, you and
Mhm.
I have never talked before, but just, having dealt with people that are victims of different types of abuse, I mean, it affects them way into their adult life. Sometimes it's something that
Yeah,
they
of
never
course.
get over.
Yep. I
And
mean,
and
even in ongoing therapy, it's hard.
I always wonder, and here this is, I guess, the really $64 question. Was you putting being placed in foster care where there were benefits and burdens, was that better than you remaining with your parent?
Um, I think in my case, it was. I mean, there was some pretty extreme abuse and neglect in the biological home.
Mhm.
That I do think that it made a difference for the better. Um, but I mean, like it pretty much was exchanging physical abuse for a lifetime of emotional abuse. And there was some physical sexual abuse with an older foster kid there who was actually sent to foster care for abusing his younger sister. Um, and so, I mean, it just kind of feels like a trade. Um, You know, I got I got um and I mean I feel like my biological parents at the time that we were removed, it kind of seems like they were pretty meh about the situation. But that's not, I mean, that's an extreme rare case, I think. From what I've seen, most of the parents that have their kids removed, they do care a lot and they do work really hard to get their kids back. And also, the system isn't the same at all as it was 20 years ago. I mean, it's gotten a lot worse.
Oh, it
Um,
worse.
well,
You think
I,
it's
I
gotten
think so.
worse?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think so. I mean, it's never been great, but
right.
I just from and granted, there's only two personal um, people that I'm thinking of right now in mind that did like great parents did absolutely nothing. Um, and one of them, their kid was like almost killed in foster care. I mean, and I guess maybe that's a little bit extreme way to put it. And she's got her kids back now. But I mean, it was really, really scary there for a minute. And so, I mean, I think that it does vary case to case for sure, but I don't think that CPS really realizes that. I think that they kind of tend to put all of the parents that they're investigating in this group of bad parents and all of the foster parents in this group of good parents. And there's no intuition involved, no real actual giving a care or second thought about the child and what's best for them. It's just everything is so black and white to them. And I mean, I guess it's hard to say. I don't know.
I think sometimes that comes from the fact that, everyone's dealing with a system that is overburdened, overworked, and there's not enough money to
Mm-hmm.
really give everyone the attention that's needed, especially families. And I think what happens is that a lot of families, they get caught on the short end of the stick.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Miss Cassandra, first of
Yes.
all, I want to ask you a question. If you could
Okay.
tell our audience, Cassandra is a host of one of our shows. What is the name of your show that you host, and what day and time is that show on?
It's Fight CPS with Cassandra, and it's on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay, so if you're watching this show now, tune in on these same social media platforms, and you'll see Miss Cassandra Woodard with her show. Cassandra, did you have any questions for Kimmy this evening?
Yeah, I was gonna ask her. Actually, I was gonna tell her thank you for telling your story. I really appreciate it because I see, like, right now I have two older kids that are in foster care. So, like, and I know that they're going through so much emotional, like, craziness because they're in group homes. So, I was just like glad to hear that you know, if somebody's willing to come on here and tell us about their foster care experience, because that's what I really would like to hear more of is people coming out and telling us like how foster care was for them. And I appreciate you coming on here. That was good because a lot of people, a lot of kids, foster kids that were former foster kids don't have the courage to even come on here and talk about some of the stuff they've been through. And you did. And then I thank you for that.
Thank you. It is hard, and I appreciate you guys having me and giving me the opportunity to share that.
Miss G, I was thinking the other day when we were doing a show a couple days ago, we're trying to change the system through the parents, through voting, that type of thing. And, across the country, they have these CPS rallies where they, try to force political change, which I agree with. But, we might be approaching this the wrong way. We might be,
That's
we might need to approach this from the child's point of view because nobody really thinks about what's going on with the child.
I
You know,
actually
I
can
so agree.
add something like about my biological mom and conversations that we've had since then. She has said that she feels like it was done sooner than she could do anything about it, that they had paperwork drawn up too soon. And from the other side, I've heard that she wouldn't show up for her drug tests and stuff. But all that aside, the only thing that she has said about it since was just about how hard it was on her that her kids were taken from her. And I didn't even realize until recently that it kind of bugs me that she's never asked me or my sister how we were since being removed from her home. And so, I mean, yeah.
She might be too afraid. She might be too afraid to ask you.
That could be.
Too embarrassed
or
to
she
ask.
might think that she knows, because we have talked a lot about how, like, the control and stuff that's gone on here. And so maybe she thinks that she already knows and stuff. And maybe it's a little bit selfish of me to want to be asked how we were since all that. I mean, you're right. Like, maybe she hasn't thought about it, or is too, doesn't want to hear it. But I mean, same with,
Well,
like, I mean,
I'm
yeah,
I'm,
I
sh-
just
I'm sure
guess I
she's
do
thought
wish that
about it.
people would ask more.
Right. I'm sure she's thought about it, but she might be embarrassed. She might be afraid to find out, what really happened in foster care.
That could be.
I mean, you know, there was a comment from Julie in the comments there. She's watching on YouTube, and I agree with her. Every mom does think that. The problem is over time, how do moms cope with it and deal with it over time?
May
Do they?
I add something? I don't mean to interrupt any of you guys or you, Mr. Davis, but Kimmy, I do want to thank you as well for being on the show, but I want to explain something to you, sweetheart. All the years you've been away from your mom, it's like they kind of give you like a gag order, kind of like they kind of mold you into not asking questions. They mold you into not being involved in your children's lives. They lie to the children. I don't know if that happened to you or not, but they do lie. They force the children to lie about their mom or whoever. So I'm not sure if they said to you, you know what, Kimmy, if you don't do this, or if you don't say this, you're not going to see your mom again. Or, did they do that? I mean, I would like to ask you that. Did they do that?
I honestly don't remember. I don't think that there was ever anything like that they I mean, and there's quite a, I was 6, 5 or 6 when I was put into the foster care. And I don't think that they ever did. But I mean, to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if they had, because I, like, as soon as I got into this foster home, like, I immediately, and even to this day, my biggest thing is I want to please these people. I want mom and dad to be happy with me. And I mean, there were some times during my rebellious teen years where I struggled between wanting to please them and wanting to figure out who I was. And, that's when they removed me from their home. But I mean, yeah, I absolutely can see what you're saying about, just kind of being instructed on how to think and feel.
Right.
And
And
what to say.
right. And that's the thing too. They lie to children. They make up stories about their parent. And it's so sad how human beings all over the world judge other parents who are dealing with the system. It's so sad. It's very sad how mothers are judged when the pain of the mother of being stripped away from her soul is so severe that you probably have no idea what your mother went through. You have no clue what your mother has gone through. I don't care what anybody on the show wrote. There was a comment that it's now, I don't know where it is, but they said, somebody said it's a mother's loss. That's not fair. That is not fair, because you don't know what that mother went through. So all the years that your mother has been crying for you and did everything she can for you, don't blame her.
I don't blame her at all. I do remember that there were visits that we were supposed to have with her, that we had been looking forward to, that she didn't make it to. And at the time, like, I don't remember if we were told why or not. I
Mm-hmm.
just remember visits, and my biological, like, I don't remember having any visits with my biological dad at all whatsoever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he just dipped out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's like after conversations with him afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
he really did choose to walk away at that point, but he was abusive. And I mean, in that case, with that, I can see that. And then
Right.
with my biological mom missing visits and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what happened. I just know that there were visits that she didn't make it to or wasn't able to make it to, or maybe we were told that there were visits and there really wasn't any. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen any paperwork, but I do know from what I've been told as an adult that it was because she wouldn't get clean. And she has told me that it was really hard to get off of the drugs, and she for 4 or 5 years still was doing drugs and stuff there. And so I think that she did take responsibility for the fact that and maybe it was so hard on her losing her kids that she got even more into drugs. But she has said that, like, she did kind of fall into that even more
Right.
after that.
Right. I do understand that. However, when they're involved, when parents are involved in the system, and say that, I had a mother today that was just smoking weed just to help her go to sleep at night, right? I mean, people take different approach. People turn into CBD, I think she said, or BCB oil. It's like from the plant. It's not
Mhm.
actual, but it's a oil from the plant.
The mellowing, not the
Yes,
THC.
that one, right.
Yeah.
And then
Uh-huh.
she said that helps her. So she's like, what helps you, Miss G? I said, incense. I have incense next to me everywhere, like lavender, and I love the smell of lavender. That's what relaxes me. So when I'm at work, I use that. So
Mhm.
she said that's what she uses, but they're going to take the children from her today because of that. Because of that.
And that's messed up, and that's an extreme overreaction.
Right.
With my biological mom, it was
Mhm.
meth. Um,
Oh, wow.
and I
Okay.
think cocaine too. But I mean, it was some really hard, heavy drugs, and she ended up having a relationship with her drug dealer after. And I mean, one of the visits that we had, we actually went over to where she was living with her new drug dealer boyfriend, and it just, I mean, they had a pool table instead of a kitchen table, and so it was a little bit weird. And that was one of the few visits that I remember with her. I think that she did want to get clean and get her kids back. And it just became too much. Like, it was overwhelming, and I don't blame her at all whatsoever. But
And that's
I just,
amazing to me. Yeah. And that's very
I
big of you. And I love the way, with all the challenges you went through, and I love the way I just love you already. I just really, I
thank
don't even
you,
know you, and I love you.
thank
Um,
you. A lot of therapy and a lot of wine.
exactly. You're amazing. But I want to tell you and everybody else out there, there's a lot of parents, you guys, that are not missing their visitation, but they're telling the children the parents don't want to show up. So be very mindful of that as well. If you are, God, I wish I can talk to all the kids out there. But yeah, there's often times where they lie to the children a lot, and the children have a different mindset about the parent, and they want to blame the parent for everything. Please understand that also with meth, that I'm learning more and more, is that meth is introduced through, I don't know, like, I guess it can go through your pores or something, or
Yeah, I think I've heard
you
that.
can
That's why they
inhale
have to,
it,
like,
but
condemn houses that have, is because it gets into the walls, and then it can get into your skin,
right.
and it just, like, there's no way it gets everywhere.
Exactly. And that's why it's very important not to be around people you don't know. Okay.
Mhm.
But your mom probably got hooked on it by being around the wrong people. And that's
Could
how you
be.
get hooked on drugs. And then when
Uh-huh.
they stole you from your mother, then it became worse for her. And that was
Mhm.
her only way to numb the pain. So she went back to what she needed to eliminate.
And I
Okay.
think that's pretty accurate.
Yes, and that's why she needed help. But how can you help her when you stole her soul from her? So
Yeah.
again, I like to bring awareness to everyone. Be careful who you hang out with. Be careful not to get yourself hooked on substance that controls you. That's very important. You need to control your destiny. Do not allow anything to control you. That goes with everything. Everything. Cigarettes, what else? Drugs, marijuana,
Caffeine,
whatever else is
all
out
of
there.
the things,
Yeah,
everything. Yeah,
yeah,
caffeine. Yeah,
yeah. So just be careful
all
who
the
you hang
things.
out with. And
Mhm.
again, don't believe everything that is said about your parents.
Mhm.
Hopefully when you get older, you will understand a little bit more of what really the dynamic that happened. But
Mhm.
again, thank you so much, Kimmy. And I would really like to speak with you again, actually. I really would after
Yeah,
the show.
same. I'd love to. Yeah, you've got my information
Yeah,
anytime.
you're a
I'm
sweetheart.
available and amenable.
Yes.
Kimmy, thank you again for sharing with us this evening. Um, it it's quite enlightening to me when I talk to people who are really in the system. I'm just a lawyer. I just represent people. My children have never been taken away. I was never a foster child. So, people think I really know what's going on. I don't. I didn't
Mhm.
experience it like you did. And I want to thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you for giving me the opportunity to.
All righty. Good night, Kimmy. Well, ladies, that brings us an end of today's show. We have another show tomorrow evening at 7 p.m.
Mhm.
And does anyone know who the guest is going to be tomorrow? No? Okay. Well, we will all be surprised by our producer. Grace will let us know. I want to thank you, Miss Woodard, for being with us, and you, Miss G. And I want to say good night to both of you, and we'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m.